You never really expect a knife to come from your own blood. That's what I kept telling myself that night, as the fireworks cracked open the California sky. My daughter, June, my little girl who once made me promise I'd always protect her, sat across from me at my own dinner table. Her husband, Warren, smirking like a man who thought he owned the room. They weren't there for family. They were there for money. $600,000 by noon tomorrow, or as Warren put, things might get ugly. He said it with that smug grin, like he was doing me a favor. And June, she didn't even look me in the eye. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. I remember the taste of the bourbon on my tongue, the smell of the pine from the Christmas tree, still clinging to the room. I'd worked my whole damn life, built my jewelry business from scratch, just to watch them burn through everything like gasoline on a match. Houses, cars, startups, Vegas trips, all on my dime. I used to call a helping. But that night, on the New Year's lights, I saw it for what it was: extortion, dressed in family ties. I smiled at Warren, raised my glass, and said, "You'll have what you deserve by noon." He laughed. June sighed in relief. But inside, something broke, quietly, cleanly, like a gold chain snapping under pressure. That was the moment I decided I wouldn't just stop paying. I'd teach them a lesson they'd never forget. And as the clock struck midnight, while the neighbors counted down and fireworks painted the sky red, I was already planning my disappearance. They thought they knew who they were dealing with. They had no idea. They say paperwork is boring until it becomes a weapon. I called Frederick, my lawyer of 20 years, and spoke in a kind of low, steady voice I reserve for clients in crises. Do it today. Clean transfer. Title to my name. All liens documented. No back door. He answered like a man used to impossible deadlines and said, "Consider it done." I could hear the office hum, the click of a keyboard. That was the sound of a plan going live. I spent the next hours like a surgeon. Not dramatic, not messy, precise. I move accounts, signed forms, notarized affidavits. I printed spreadsheets that listed every outrageous charge Warren racked up. Poker debts, failed angel investments, that summer in Vegas he swore was strategic. I pulled out old emails where June promised she'd pay me back, saved voice messages where Warren swore loyalty to me while promising to handle things. I wrote it all down, numbered the pages, and slid the deeds and the paper trail into a plain cardboard box. On top, I put a folded letter, not a sermon, just a fax. I clipped the credit cards' numbers, called the banks, had them frozen. There was a small, expensive satisfaction in making reality match the reckoning I'd rehearsed for months. I packed a single bag. Sage, my ex, texted, "You sure about this?" I typed back, "Yes. See you in Havana." That was the last ordinary thing I did. I left a key in the ceramic bowl on the hallway table, along with the box. No shouting, no dramatic note, just a quiet record, like a ledger. I drove to the airport as the town started its New Year's celebrations. The radio played an old Springsteen song that felt like a benediction. I checked my phone, hit send on the final email to Frederick, confirmation of transfer, and watched the little blue check mark appear. My chest thudded. Freedom and fear tasted the same. Then my phone buzzed. The caller ID glowed. Warren. Warren's name flashed again, lighting up my phone like a warning flare. I let it ring. Then again, and again. Each vibration was another echo of the man who thought threats made him powerful. When it finally stopped, I looked out to the windshield. Fireworks bursting over the bay, the reflection dancing off the hood of my old Cadillac. The world was celebrating a new year. I was burying an old one. By dawn, I was at LAX. I handed the ticket to the agent with a smile that felt like a mask. "Havana," I said, as if it were a business trip. She wished me Happy New Year. I almost laughed. My phone buzzed once more, a voicemail. I didn't have to listen. I could already hear Warren's voice, full of fake concern and greed. "Don't do anything stupid, Dev. We're family." Family. That word used to mean something. Now it was a loaded gun pointed at my own chest. When the plane lifted, the clouds swallowed Los Angeles whole. I looked down one last time at the sprawl of lights, the beaches, the city that raised me and stripped me bare. Somewhere down there, June would wait to find that box, that quiet little bomb of truth sitting on her kitchen counter. I close my eyes and whisper to no one. By the time the sun sets, they'll know what they've done. The engines roared, the seatbelt light blinked on, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone a damn thing. And while the world toasted champagne and sang Auld Lang Syne, I disappeared. Just like that. June woke up late that morning. I could picture it. Hair messy, robe on, sunglasses in the house, because the hangover never really left her anymore. Warren would already be pacing, checking his watch, calling me every 10 minutes. He'd expect me to cave. I always had. That was our unspoken tradition. I'd say no. He'd push harder, and eventually I'd write the check. But not this time. I imagined him pulling into my driveway, June's SUV gliding in like a queen's carriage. She'd probably rehearse her speech. Guilt first, then anger, then tears. Warren would play the victim, talk about cash flow and short-term leverage. They'd let themselves in, call my name. Silence. Then they'd see it. The box. Plain, brown, unmarked. On top, one envelope. For June and Warren. I know the moment she opened it, because that's when calls stopped. Inside, she'd find everything. The deeds, the statements, the legal notices, every signed receipt and bank withdrawal. All the evidence that the house wasn't hers. It was mine, that every investment Warren made came from money he never earned. I can almost hear her voice crack when she reached the page showing the overdraft on her account, the frozen cards, the note that said simply, "The support stops today." That's the moment my daughter would realize the party was over, and as she stared at the paper trail of her own downfall, fireworks from last night still echoing in her head, the truth would settle in like a hangover, slow, heavy, undeniable. Her life of luxury wasn't built on love. It was built on my mercy. And mercy just ran out. I didn't need to be there to see the storm. I could picture Warren losing his temper, the way his voice always climbed when he felt cornered. He'd blame her, of course. You said your dad would pay. That's his kind of love, all leverage, no loyalty. June would defend him at first, then crumble, crying that I'd set them up. Maybe she'd even call me a monster. It's funny how people twist things when the mirror finally shows their reflection. By noon, the neighbors would notice. June's voice carried. It always did. She'd be standing on the porch, still in her robe, shouting into the cold January air. Warren would be dragging boxes, slamming doors. The perfect couple. The one that threw charity galas and posted gratitude quotes online, unraveling in full view. That was the first of 3 public humiliations, though I didn't plan it that way. Truth has a way of choosing its own stage. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a cafe in Havana, sunlight bleeding through the blinds, watching old men play dominoes. Their laughter sounded like freedom. I ordered coffee strong enough to wake the dead and opened the newspaper. Back home, it was still morning. My phone buzzed with a flood of messages, June's name lighting up again and again. I didn't read a single one. Instead, I scribbled a line on a napkin. Every ending deserves silence. Then I folded it and tucked it into my wallet. Outside, a street band played Guantanamera. I caught my reflection in the window, older, thinner, freer. And for the first time in decades, I realized I wasn't running away from my family. I was running toward myself. Back in California, the fire spread fast. Warren vanished first. Rumor had it he'd skipped town with what was left of their savings. The serious people he'd mentioned on New Year's Eve, they weren't metaphors. They started calling June's phone, showing up at the house, demanding payment. Within a week, she'd lost the car, then the house. I heard from Frederick that the bank auctioned it off before she even found a lawyer. June tried to hold on to the image, designer heels, perfect hair, brunch smiles, but pride doesn't pay rent. She moved into a 1-bedroom apartment off Sunset, got a job at Nordstrom folding other people's clothes. There's a certain poetry in that, I suppose. She used to mock the clerks for not aiming higher. Now she was one of them. Warren filed for divorce by email. He blamed financial incompatibility. I'd seen coward before, but that man redefined the word. I never called her. Not once. That was the hardest part. Silence. Every instinct screamed to help her, to soften the fall. But I knew that if I did, she'd never climb on her own. So I watched from afar. Her Instagram went quiet. Her friends stopped tagging her in photos. Then came the eviction notice. Frederick sent me a copy, unasked. It was official. June Devlin, once the golden daughter of California's jewelry king, was gone from her glass palace. Some nights, I'd sit on the balcony in Havana, cigar in hand, listening to the ocean and thinking of her walking home from a late shift, tired but alive. The pain was heavy, yes, but there was something beautiful about it. Pain, I realized, is the only currency that can buy wisdom. By March, the headlines had forgotten her name, but I hadn't. Havana was hot that season, the kind of heat that slowed time itself. I spent mornings polishing old silver in the market, selling bracelets to tourists who thought I was just another aging craftsman. I liked it that way, anonymous, unburdened. Every now and then, I'd see a father and daughter laughing over coffee, and something inside me would twist. I'd tell myself, you did the right thing. Then I'd whisper back, so why does it still hurt? One afternoon, I opened my email, an unexpected message. The subject line read, "From June." My hand shook before I even clicked. The message was short, just a few lines. I found the box. I get it now. You wanted to teach me, not destroy me. I'm sorry for the things I said. I'm starting over. No begging. No manipulation. Just humility. The kind I'd never seen in her before. I must have read it 20 times. There were no tears, no cinematic music swelling in the background. Just quiet, relief and guilt, sitting side by side like old enemies sharing a drink. That night, I wrote her back. Growth doesn't happen in comfort, kiddo. You'll be okay. I didn't hit send. Not yet. I kept the draft, staring at the blinking cursor until the sun came up. Somewhere between the ocean breeze and the distant laughter from the plaza, I felt something loosen in my chest, the weight of being both her savior and her jailer. Maybe the cruelest part of love isn't letting go. It's watching someone finally stand without you. Spring rolled in slow, the kind of slow that forces you to think. I'd wake before dawn, take a walk along the Malecon, the ocean wind biting just enough to remind me I was still alive. I started keeping a small notebook, old habit from my business days, but instead of balance sheets, I filled it with fragments, thoughts, regrets, plans I wasn't sure I'd ever carry out. And always one name at the top of every page, June. Word reached me through Frederick. She was working double shifts now. Nordstrom by day, Denny's at night. Her wrists swollen, her voice gone rough from exhaustion. But she hadn't borrowed a cent. That part made me proud, even if I'd never admit it aloud. I began to imagine her walking home in the rain. Cheap umbrella flipping inside out. No driver, no credit card, no safety net. Just a woman learning the value of every dollar. I'd spent years trying to shield her from pain, but pain was finally teaching her everything I couldn't. One morning, I bought a stack of Cuban postcards. I wrote one out in shaky block letters. Proud of you. Keep going. I didn't sign it. Just a return address. A cafe I frequented near the harbor. I never knew if she'd get it, and maybe that was for the best. That night, I met Sade for dinner. First time in years it didn't feel awkward. She looked at me over a glass of rum and said, "You look lighter." I smiled. Maybe because for once, I'm not carrying anyone else's life. And for the first time in decades, the air around me didn't feel like debt. It felt like forgiveness waiting to land. May came with a strange kind of calm, the calm that only follows destruction. I'd stopped counting the days, but Havana kept time for me. The fishermen, the fruit vendors, the same song echoing from a transistor radio every morning. Life moved in circles, not lines. And somewhere inside that rhythm, I started to feel ready. Frederick sent word. She's steady, Dev, real job, real savings. No contact with Warren. She even started volunteering at a community class, financial literacy for single moms. I read that message twice. smiling into my coffee. My daughter, the woman who once thought budgeting was a hobby for the poor, was teaching other people how to manage their money. That night, I went through my notebook again, notes on what I'd built, what I'd lost, and what still mattered. I kept coming back to one truth. I hadn't taught June how to live. I'd only taught her how to survive. It was time to finish the lesson. So I booked a flight. One way. No grand plan, no script. Just instinct. I packed light. Same leather duffel I'd carry when I left. The one that still smelled faintly of cedar and old gold polish. At the airport, as the attendant scanned my ticket, I caught my reflection in the glass. Lines deeper, hair grayer, eyes quieter. I didn't see a man escaping anymore. I saw a father returning to face the aftermath of his own justice. As the plane lifted off toward Texas, I whispered under my breath, "Let's see what kind of woman you become, June." And somewhere, 30,000 feet above the Gulf, I realized revenge had turned into redemption without me even noticing. Austin hit me like a memory I hadn't asked for. Dry air, barbecue smoke, that phantom of live music somewhere down the street. Everything looked the same, but I wasn't. I checked into a small motel off South Congress, the kind of place where nobody asks questions and everybody minds their own damn business. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the worn carpet, rehearsing a conversation I didn't know how to start. I waited 2 days before I went looking for her. Didn't call. Didn't email. I just drove. Frederick had mentioned a place, a strip mall by the freeway where she taught part-time now. Smart sense, the sign said. I parked across the street and watched through the glass. There she was. June, hair tied back. Jeans instead of designer dresses. A second-hand laptop open in front of her. She was explaining something to a group of women. Cash flow, maybe, or interest rates. Her hands moved when she talked, confident, sure. I almost didn't recognize her. When class ended, I followed her out, heart pounding like a rookie thief's. She didn't see me at first. Then she froze mid-step. Our eyes met. No tears. No screams. Just silence that felt like forgiveness wrapped in disbelief. "Dad?" she said finally, voice small but steady. "Hey, kiddo." I managed, my throat dry as dust. She stepped closer, studying me, as if deciding whether to be angry or grateful. Then she whispered, "You look alive." I chuckled. Guess I finally started taking my own advice. And in that parking lot under the Texas sun, I saw something I hadn't seen in years: respect. Not pity, not fear, just pure, earned respect. That's when I knew my revenge had done its job. We ended up at a diner. Not the fancy kind she used to brag about, but one with chipped mugs and country music humming low from an old jukebox. She ordered black coffee. I did the same. The waitress called us Han, and for a second, it felt like time had folded back to when she was still my little girl, sneaking sips from my cup and pretending she liked it. We didn't talk about money. Not yet. We talked about small things, her job, her students, the way Austin heat sticks to your skin in June. She laughed once, really laughed, and it startled me. It wasn't polished or rehearsed. It was real. Finally, she looked at me and said, "You let me fall." "I had to," I replied. "If I caught you again, you'd never learn to walk." She nodded slowly, eyes shining. "You were right. About everything." "Don't say that," I said, shaking my head. I wasn't right. I was desperate. There was a long pause, just a clatter of dishes, and the sound of someone pouring another cup. Then she reached into her bag and slid a folded piece of paper across the table. A business plan. Financial literacy outreach. It read. She wanted to expand it, make it a real foundation. "I don't need your money," she said quickly, "but I could use your experience." I stare at her, that spark in her eyes, the same one I buried under luxury and guilt years ago, now burning bright on its own. "Deal," I said, "but this time we're partners." She smiled. "No bailouts." Not a chance. And for the first time, coffee between us tasted like peace, not penance. Weeks passed, and we fell into a rhythm I didn't think was possible anymore. Morning started early. Her with spreadsheets, me with coffee and a yellow notepad, sketching out structure and branding for her nonprofit. She'd roll her eyes every time I used old school pen and paper, but secretly she loved it. I could tell. We worked from her tiny apartment, the one that smelled like burnt toast and lavender detergent. No marble countertops, no ocean view, just honesty and effort. It was the most beautiful workspace I'd ever seen. One afternoon, she asked, "Why didn't you just tell me the truth back then, that you were done helping us?" I sighed, because you wouldn't have heard me. Sometimes, life has to shout what words can't. She nodded, quiet for a while, then said, "I hated you for months." "I know," I said softly. "I hated me too." Then she smiled, small, tired but real. Guess we both survived. We presented the first seminar in July. 20 people showed up. I stood at the back, watching June command the room with the calm of someone who's fought for her footing. When she finished, applause filled the space. And then, a familiar face appeared at the door. Warren. Wrinkled suit, slick grin, like a ghost that hadn't learned it was dead. He clapped slowly, mockingly. "Didn't think I'd find you running a charity, sweetheart." His eyes slid to me. "And you back from the dead?" June froze. I didn't move, just stared him down, quiet and steady. The room went silent. Then I said, "Everyone deserves a lesson. Looks like you're next." Warren smirked. That same reptilian confidence I used to mistake for charm. He strutted closer, straightening his cheap tie. "Relax, old man," he said loud enough for the audience to hear. "I'm just here to congratulate my ex-wife on finding her calling, begging for donations." A few people chuckled nervously, not knowing the history. June's jaw tightened, but she didn't break. Not this time. She turned to crowd. "Everyone," she said evenly. "This is Warren, the man who taught me everything about financial failure." The room went dead quiet. Warren's grin faltered. "You always did love an audience," she added, voice steady as steel. That was her first public victory, the first reversal. She didn't need me to step in. She was doing what I never could, facing the monster without flinching. He tried to laugh it off. "Cute. You think you're better than me now." She smiled. "No, just finally free." He stormed out, humiliated. And right there, in that small rented room with folding chairs and a flickering fluorescent light, June owned her past and his power over her completely. Afterward, she sank into a chair, trembling. "I thought I'd fall apart," she whispered. I put a hand on her shoulder. "You just gave your first real seminar." She laughed through tears, the kind that come when the last chain breaks. That night, as we drove home, she said, "You know, I think that was your revenge too." I shook my head. "No, kiddo, that was yours." But deep down I knew the best revenge isn't destroying someone else. It's watching the person they broke become unbreakable. Word spread fast after that seminar. June's story hit local news. Business heiress turns mentor. People loved a redemption arc, and she'd earned every inch of it. Donations started trickling in, enough to rent a real office. She insisted on handling everything herself, contracts, budgets, even taxes. Watching her build from scratch felt like watching my younger self, only wiser. One evening, we attended a small business conference downtown. June was on a panel about financial recovery. And who should be there, networking in his fake Armani suit? Warren. Couldn't resist the spotlight. When they handed June the mic, he smirked like he had some inside joke. She didn't look at him once. "People think failure ruins you," she said. "But sometimes it's just your teacher showing up in an ugly disguise." The audience laughed, unaware of the dagger in her tone. Warren's smile cracked. That was public humiliation number 2. Poetic, surgical, untraceable. Afterward, he cornered me by the coffee table. "You set me up," he hissed. "You both did." I took a slow sip. "No, Warren, you just finally met the truth, and she doesn't owe you a damn thing." He leaned closer. "You think this is over?" I smiled, quiet but firm. "It's only over when you stop pretending you ever mattered." He left, red-faced, muttering threats he didn't have the power to make. June came over, slipping her arm through mine. "You okay?" she asked. "Better than ever," I said, Looking around the room, she now commanded with grace. And as the applause rose again for the next speaker, I realized something. The man I used to be would have called this revenge. The man I am now just calls it justice wearing heels. By autumn, her foundation had grown faster than either of us expected. The local paper called her a voice for second chances. Banks invited her to speak about ethics in lending. Schools wanted her programs. She was becoming what I'd secretly hoped for, proof that hardship can build more than it breaks. Then one afternoon, Frederick called. His tone was crisp like old paper tearing. "Warren filed a complaint," he said. "Claims you defrauded him. Says you transferred assets illegally years ago." I laughed, not the nervous kind, the weary kind. He's playing his last card. "He doesn't have a case," Frederick continued, "but he's noisy. Reporters might bite." That night, June and I sat in her office going through old files, every signature, every timestamp, every email I'd kept. The same box that once condemned her was now our shield. "Let him come," she said finally. "We'll face it." A week later, at the hearing, Warren arrived wearing arrogance like a badge. Cameras flashed. He told his story. The poor son-in-law deceived by the cold-hearted patriarch. The judge asked for proof. Warren fumbled. Then June stood, calm and clear, and presented the documents. Every lie, every debt, every transfer he'd signed himself. You could feel the air leave the room when the judge said, "Case dismissed." That was public humiliation number 3 and the cleanest. No shouting, no revenge speech. Just truth, simple and devastating. Outside, reporters swarmed. Warren tried to speak, but June stepped forward first. "My father taught me that real wealth isn't money," she said into the microphones. "It's integrity." And right there I felt something shift. The revenge that started with anger ended with grace. Hers, not mine. That night, after the hearing, we drove out past the city, just me and June, windows down, autumn wind cutting through the quiet. The skyline faded behind us, and the fields opened up under a velvet sky. She pulled over on a ridge where the town lights shimmered below. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in tissue, my old gold pocket watch. The one I'd pawned years ago to pay her college tuition. She must have tracked it down somehow. She placed it in my palm and said, "Time to let it go, Dad." I thumbed the worn engraving. For every choice, a cost. That watch had been with me through everything. The building, the falling, the reckoning. Now it felt like a relic of a man who no longer existed. She took a deep breath, eyes glistening. "You didn't ruin my life," she said softly. "You gave it back to me." I smiled, the kind that hurts in the best way. "You earned it." We sat there, the air humming with crickets and closure. Then she flipped open the watch, set the hands to midnight, and placed it on the dashboard. "A new year starts whenever we decide it does," she whispered. Somewhere in the distance, fireworks cracked. Early celebrations for the upcoming holidays. The colors flashed across her face, just like that night a year ago. Only this time, I wasn't leaving. I looked at her, at the woman she'd become, and felt the last ember of vengeance burn out, leaving only warmth. Justice had done its job. Love had finished it. And as the sky lit up again, I thought maybe revenge isn't about payback. Maybe it's just a long road home. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right